like even for bad writing, this is utter tripe. Like this is nonsense.
Most isekai is. Can we talk about isekai?
Do we have to? But yes, please let's.
We can talk about it briefly because it makes me sick and I don't want to
Mhm.
throw up on screen. So
Yeah. Well, okay. There are three, maybe three, maybe four isekai worth watching. The first one is Aura Battler Dunbean, produced in 1981 by Yoshiyuki Tomino. The second one is Vision of Escaflowne, which you should be familiar with because they had that nice Kickstarter campaign and it's on Blu-ray. Third one is Magic Knight Ray Earth. And if you love magical girls, you should love that one too. Great mecha show. And then the fourth one is the Escaflowne movie. And that's all I can think of right now.
I'm so happy you mentioned Escaflowne.
Gotta.
Yeah, I think anyone who loves isekai should watch Escaflowne. Incredible series, really great, really ahead of its time. Oh,
Terrible
man.
dub.
Yeah, that's true.
I
didn't
should
know
say
at the time.
the dub we're referring to is what's known as Fox Caflone because
Yes.
it got aired on Fox Kids, which is a terrible idea because that is a show where people get killed with swords a lot.
Yeah, talk about a butcher, but yeah, like I agree with the four that you say are worth watching, and I'll be honest, I think there is isekai that's out today that you can watch and still enjoy. I don't consider myself a gatekeeper in the sense that like everything that comes out now is bad, but I think that everything that comes out now is hyper calculated. That's the difference that people don't quite pick up on. It's that like reincarnated as a slime is fun, you know? And you know what else is fun? The 8 other shows that I saw just like it over the last few years. ReZero
Yep.
is good. Shield Hero is good.
No, it's not. Don't you lie to me.
I'm trying to be as diplomatic as
I know.
possible, but no, like that's the thing. All of these series obviously have redeeming qualities to them, but at the same time, if you look at any other era in anime history, you never saw such an oversaturation in any genre. Like even in shonen,
Wanna bet?
well, tell me if I'm wrong, but like even with shonen,
So let me
like,
tell you
there's
about the
still unique
super
stories.
robot boom of the 70s and the real robot boom of the 80s. In
Let's go with
no
that.
uncertain terms, those time periods were absolutely saturated with super robots because they sold toys. And for those of you who are watching, I'm sure you know what the difference between super and real robot is. But for those of you who are younger and apparently under 20, you might not know this. So super robots are Mazinger Z, Gurren Lagann, Getter Robo. Real robots are Gundam, Votoms, Pat Labor, Macross. All shows, by the way, came out in the 80s.
Something in the
What
water during that time.
Well, something in the water was, oh wow, Gunpla is selling like hotcakes. But yeah, like the dearth of other types of shows is nothing new. In the 60s, there were a bunch of magical girl shows like Little Witch, etc., like Sally the Witch or Fushigi no Marmo. No, not Marmo. That's from something else. But like if one show was popular, like there were a glut of people trying to make money off of it. And that's always been the way that that's the way the industry is. That's how entertainment is. That's just sad. But it was much less calculated, as you said back then. Whereas in the 70s, it was like, okay, how far divorced is Mazinger, or is your show from where Mazinger Z was like a couple of years ago? Because Mazinger Z was very popular. It had over 102 episodes. Is your thing like that? And like the answer is yes. But our robot transforms. Oh, so now it becomes Get a Robo. And then that becomes Combattler V. And then that becomes Voltes 5 and Tosho Daimios getting a DVD or getting a Blu-ray release very soon, if I'm correct. But you know,
Nice.
the mecha structure could be applied very broadly. Like I think it was Acro Bunch that was basically like Indiana Jones, and then they summoned a mecha to fight the monster, and that was late 70s. But you know, you could apply a filter to mecha, right? More than you can apply it to isekai, because the isekai thing is always all about going to another world, finding a lot of women, and getting well, let's not go there, but having this power trip, power fantasy that's like actually super sick, like twisted when you break it down, right? So you can apply and because it's all fantasy, you can apply these like, oh, and this one's a sexy snake woman, and this one's a sexy bird girl, and that's like, this is a sexy fox that you bought. Ugh, you bought it. You bought her. Fuck you, Shield Hero. Fuck you so much. But you know, that sort of thing. It's all filtered through this specifically Western fantasy MMO look, right? So yeah. It's all very calculated to look like Sword Art Online, ad infinitum.
Yeah.
So
To me, like, it's so obnoxious and it's so sickening.
Oh yeah.
Like I like Made in Abyss, you know, I really enjoyed that series, but for me the reason why I enjoyed that series was because I took a sabbatical from anime for a couple years. I'm talking, I purposely did not look at any anime news because I was so sick of it. And then I remember in a week's time I watched Devilman Crybaby and Made in Abyss, and I'm like, oh, okay, these shows seem pretty decent. Let me see, despite what flaws they have, obvious flaws, let me see what's going on in the scene. And then I saw what was going on in the scene, and it rapidly changed my opinion on those shows, because to me it was like nothing had changed since Sword Art came out to now. Like, it was so sad to me as a fan. Isekai, I don't want to say it's a stain on anime, but I know 10 years from now, if the scene does swing back to how it once was, we will look at this era of isekai, and like you were saying, the senpai fuck me gently and all of this sibling love stuff. Like, we're going to look at it and we're going to be like, there's one way to take storytelling and make a unique concept. There's another to play on the interests of people. Like I said, make it super calculated, make it very exploitative, and then just push it out there to a young audience that
kick
is
it
still
out the
trying
door.
to, they don't even know themselves yet. They don't know what their morals are. They don't know what they're truly interested in. All they know is that, oh my god, all of these series have sexy girls and one plain looking guy who can attract 7 different women, and he can for some reason out of all these people generate all this magical power, and he goes to a different world. Like, this is amazing to me. That's bullshit. That's bullshit storytelling. There's no R&D being done. It makes me sick, and I don't know why we continue to enable this in anime.
Because it's cheap to make. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the show's story is, as long as you can sell like body pillows off of it. Basically, it's all about like anime doesn't make its money back on being broadcast on TV or on DVD sales. It makes its money on merch. Or it's so cheap to produce that they can throw it out there. They just kick it out the door with no real regard for if it gets merch or not, because it didn't cost that much to make. It's a keep the lights on situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting you brought up like the niche thing. I've said this before. It's the inmates are running the asylum. It's the problem that Marvel Comics and DC Comics had in the States about 20 years ago. It's the problem that sci-fi writers had to deal with and still have to deal with. But you know, when Edgar Rice Burroughs set out to write John Carter of Mars, right? He didn't set out to start an entire genre. Hey, there's an isekai you should watch. Oof. Yeah. Well, gonna have to burn those books now. Sorry, Dad. But like when he wrote John Carter of Mars, he wasn't setting out to create an entire genre of science fiction, sword and sandal nonsense sort of thing. But the people that were writing sci-fi after him were like, well, gotta lean into this pulpy stuff to make a buck. And then the pulpy stuff became really, accessible. And we got stuff like Flash Gordon, and we got stuff like Buck Rogers, and then we got Star Wars, and Star Wars was popular and good up until very recently. But like, the problem is now that the people who are making comics, who are making anime, who are making this and making that, are people who were into it before there was an into it to be, basically. Like, it would be if you and I collaborated and wrote a mech anime, basically. It probably wouldn't sell for beans, but the people like you and me who would be interested in that sort of thing would be like, yeah, I get it. They did that thing that I like in the mech show where they did this, did whatever. And they, the folks like you and me would be like, aha, yes, this thing. And that, that cool thing that we did because we get it, because we're in there, but we're not the sort of people who are like, oh yes, and then we're gonna make his cat girl show up for no particular reason, and she had really big boobs and she fell on the main character all the time because that's what the niche is. And like, when Lama Notaru did it, it was funny because it'd never been done before. When Raftalia goes tits first into whatever that jackass's name is, it's because that's the only thing, like, that's what they think is what happens. Like, the people who have limited social interaction with actual human beings trying to write stories.
Yeah, that's how I feel with a lot of the series now. It's kind of cringy. Like Dragon Maid, I think it's called Dragon Maid, and like Eromanga Sensei, and like all of these other shows. It's like and again, like, I'm not trying to tear down someone else's appreciation of a series. Yeah. I do think there is redeeming qualities with everything. I'm the same kind of guy who I love pop music and I also love indie music, so I can see the value in that. But at a certain point in time, you have to look at what's happening with the field and be like, how come every girl has huge titties, but she looks like she's 7 years old, but she's actually 600 years old? No one thinks like that. No one actually looks like that. No one who has a stable frame of mind would write a character or draw a character like that. And the fact that it was successful once and you're trying to capitalize off of it, you're not capitalizing off of it because of the content of story. You're doing it for the money. You know that there's a sea of dollars being thrown at this sort of merch now. And it's like, at what point do we look at what anime has become and realize it's just... Again, like, I don't want to say it, but it feels like everything now in anime is a cesspool. Like,
it's always been a cesspool.
Yeah, but at least back in the day, the girls who had big titties were written well. Yeah. The girls who had like the yandere thing, they were integral to the plot. If there was a harem, at least the harem was interesting for the 26 episodes across the board. Now it's like, what's the point of watching any of these series if they're all interchangeable?